Aha, there it is. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this Licensing Subcommittee D meeting. My name is Gareth Sykes. I am the Governance Services Officer for this meeting. Before we begin formal business on the agenda, I will very, very quickly go through the protocols for Hackney Council remote meetings. So please bear with me for a couple of minutes. Okay, only speak when invited to by the chair. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and direct all communication via the chair. Will everyone please ensure that their mics are muted when they are not speaking, apart from the chair, who does not need to mute their mic at any stage. When speaking, please be succinct and do not exceed the allotted timeframes highlighted in the hearing procedures in the agenda meeting pack. If you're referring to a specific page or picture in the report, refer to that page number, please. If you're having any technical difficulties, please use the chat function in Google Meet to alert the meeting. Please do not use the chat function for putting formal questions to the licensing subcommittee members. Any persistent disruptive behaviour will result in removal from the meeting. If there is more than one application, parties are advised that after each application is heard in turn, so in the meeting paper, that they leave the meeting. But obviously we only have one application today, so that's not applicable. Applicants and all other parties will be asked to leave the proceedings after the item is concluded. Once all applications have been concluded, any remaining parties will be asked to log out of the hearing. Please do so promptly so the councillors can discuss the application after the formal business of the meeting has concluded. Okay, thank you very much. So we will begin the formal items of the agenda, and we will begin with electing a chair for this committee meeting.
Nominate Councillor Bell.
Thank you, colleagues. Hope everyone can hear me clearly. Let's do the formal business first. We have no apologies for absence. Are there any declarations of interest by colleagues? And we can go on to our hearing procedure. Kimberly, especially for yourself, the hearing procedure is that, first of all, the applicant will make their case for the application. At that stage, only the three of us can ask questions. Then after they've done that, you get your chance to speak. Again, initially, only the three of us ask questions. Get to step 6 in our hearing procedure, then there can be a discussion between the parties. There can be suggestions for amendments or conditions that might help matters. And at the end of that stage, when we've sort of finished the discussion, I'll ask each of the main parties to make a closing statement in the same order as before. So you will get a final word, and you will have to leave us, and we will make our decision later today. And we'll publish it on our website as soon as possible. There are some delays publishing decisions at the moment due to the cyber attack on the council, but we will endeavour to email it to you, get it to you in some version as soon as we possibly can. Is that clear to you?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Great. Now, I'm expecting to hear from Mr. Colvin, behalf of the applicant, and him to call Richard Bradley, Steve Ambrose, Amanda Tiernan, and Andy Tipple as necessary. I assume you'll be speaking and calling them if you need them.
Yes, so I understand I have 5 minutes, and I'm going to be occupying the 5 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. And so the councillors sitting today are Councillor Emma Pluvier. Can you identify yourself, Emma? The wave.
That's me, Councillor for London Fields.
And Councillor Peter Snell.
Hi, Councillor for Dalston.
And we're being assisted by Amanda North, our legal advisor. And you already know Mr. Sykes, who is the committee officer for the hearing. There have been several packs of papers circulated for this hearing. Kimberly, you've had the particularly important one called the skeleton argument.
Yes, I have. Thank you. Yes.
And some other background papers have come around as well. I think we've all got 2 or 3 extra sets. So with that, the only final point to make is my IT occasionally dumps me out of meetings for no good reason. If that does happen, I ask you to give me 1 minute to come back. It happens a lot, then I might ask a colleague to take over. We can determine these with just 2 councillors, but we prefer not to, obviously. So with the preliminaries, I think are all done. So Suba, could you please introduce the application?
Thank you, Chair. Licensing Service received an application for a bingo premises license under the Gambling Act 2005 for 181 Newton High Street. As stated in the agenda, the applicant has submitted additional information which has been circulated. The licensing authorities have withdrawn their objection based on agreed conditions. However, interested parties' objections remains. I also kindly apologize for not including reference to Section 153 of the Gambling Act in the report. This will be included in any future reports. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Colvin's over to you to make the case for the application.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. And in my 5 minutes, I'm going to make 5 points, and they're going to be brief ones. The first point is you've got no objection in front of you from any authority, whether dealing with crime and disorder, safeguarding or licensing or anything else. And as you know, the licensing authority withdrew its representation after it was supplied with information about my client's operations, its track record and its experience, and on the basis of an agreed list of conditions which I've put into my skeleton. Secondly, my client is a highly competent organisation licensed by the Gambling Commission with well-developed systems for public protection, excellent staff training, monitoring, audit and local liaison. It's provided extensive evidence of this, which is challenged by nobody. Thirdly, the effect of this is that despite operating 180 premises across the land, including in some challenging areas over very many years, it has never experienced a license review or other enforcement. Fourthly, regarding the objections, 2 are concerned that crime and disorder would arise outside. And I'm very happy to state that this will not happen based on the extensive direct experience of my client's witnesses before you and also its decades of operational experience. Bingo premises are not betting offices. They have a different product, layout, customer demographic, visitor numbers and visit patterns, and a different approach to management and supervision. They just don't experience loitering or other antisocial behaviour as described, and there's no evidence before you that they do. However, in the extremely unlikely event of any issues, my client will deal with them, and if it fails to, any resident could bring a review. And one objector, and I apologise, I don't know whether that objector is here or not, considers that gambling is undesirable or undesirable here. And I'm afraid that, put briefly, as I must, this is not a relevant argument and is dealt with by the Gambling Commission at page 57 of the bundle. There's also a late expressed concern that children might walk by and see that this is a gambling establishment. Well, that would be true of every high street in which, like here, there are betting offices, fruit machines in pubs and lottery terminals in newsagents. In fact, as a matter of law, children are allowed into bingo premises, but they're not allowed into my clients, and nor can they even see in, unlike the premises I have mentioned. So my client's approach goes much further than the law, codes or guidance requires. My client, of course, has Challenge 25 displayed prominently on the front, and its exterior marketing is controlled by regulations. Finally, fifthly, Section 153. And as you can see, where each of A, B, C and D is satisfied, there is a statutory aim to grant, described by the Gambling Commission as the authority's primary obligation. Just noting that the first licensing objective relates to crime and disorder rather than nuisance, but all of A, B, C and D are satisfied here, and therefore I respectfully invite the subcommittee to grant this application.
Okay, thank you very much. Very precise. Questions from other colleagues? Councillor Snell? Councillor Snell, any questions at this point? We can't can't hear you.
Not at this point, no. I'll save anything for discussion.
Okay, thank you. So Kimberly, it's over to you for 5 minutes to make your case.
Thank you for that. My husband and I have been residents of Hackney for 10 years. And in fact, we're property owners here in the building of the proposed bingo establishment. And unfortunately, we recall the nuisance of the last establishment in the place. Our opposition to the bingo premises is not based on minor specific concerns that can be addressed by adding CCTV or serving tea on the premises rather than alcohol. But it's based on the belief that even a well-run bingo establishment is in much way the same way, undesirable in much way the same way that a strip club would be. I wanted to specifically address the point that Mr. Colvin just made from point 27 on page 8 of the skeleton argument. And it reads, the second objector says that gambling is corrosive and the premises could be better used. The objector is entitled to hold and express such opinions, but respectfully, they are irrelevant and cannot be taken into account. Unfortunately, we take issue with this, frankly, very disrespectful dismissal of concerns that gambling is corrosive. The legal argument is really only half of the argument. The moral concerns of the community matter, and they make up more of a relevant side of this argument. In fact, we wanted to draw a parallel to this. The government was not legally required to extend free school meals during the recent lockdown, but did so under sustained public pressure. The government could have said the public is entitled to hold such opinions, but respectfully, they are irrelevant. But of course, they didn't do that because they know had they done that, the public would have lost trust and respect. And we also wonder too, would members of Kashino senior management be happy if a strip club or a cigarette dispensary opened across the road from their front doors, especially if they have children? We doubt it. For similar reasons, we don't want a Kashino on our front doorstep. A bingo premises like a strip club and increasingly a cigarette dispensary just has no place on the modern high street. Thank you.
Okay, do colleagues have specific questions to Kimberly? Or should we just move into discussion space so we can raise everything?
Move into
Move into discussion phase, we can raise anything. Councillor Snell, do you have any points you want to ask either party?
We have a fairly comprehensive, it does help us in considering these applications to have the outline argument put before us. I wonder if it might be appropriate to ask our legal advisor, Amanda, to confirm that the argument made there, and in particular the part in relation to section 153, is accurate and a valid summary of the law as it stands.
Amanda?
Yes, apologies. Yes, as far as I can see, the arguments made by Mr. Colvin are correct, and he has set out the law correctly.
In which case, the follow-up to the objector is, we are constrained here by the law, and any objections then have to address those points that are set out under section 153 of the Gambling Act 2005. And at the moment, I can't see that we're being presented with evidence that suggests that it's not compliant with that guidance. But the objector can come back to me. We can't simply set aside the law. That's the problem.
No, I understand that. And that's why I made a parallel that, of course, there are legal requirements. Of course there are. But there's also a moral obligation. And I think if community members who live in this community and who pay taxes in this community don't want this type of establishment in the location, I think it's worthwhile for us to come forward and say so. And in the comments that I circulated yesterday, I also mentioned, the marketing of the Kashino. It's targeted at children almost the same way that cigarette companies used to target children. It's corrosive. Unfortunately, these type of businesses prey on vulnerable people. the people that spend their money in the location, you know, are from vulnerable situations. So, you know, we just felt a moral obligation to come and say something. And I recognize that gambling is legal in the UK, and there's nothing more that I can say. I just felt the need to say my piece.
Well, you're absolutely welcome to come and say your piece. And in fact, I think it's your objections and those of your neighbours that have brought this to committee. But, you know, this is, as we say, a quasi-judicial committee, and we have to stay within the rules as we understand them. Can I just say, the point that you're making there, this being targeted at children, I mean, what the applicant is saying, that is met by the Challenge 25 policy, which means that anyone who looks under 25 is going to be challenged and not allowed to use the premises. So I don't really understand why you're saying it's targeted at children.
I think the marketing is targeted at children outside. And the paper that I sent around yesterday, I don't know if everyone has it in front of them or not, shows a photo of the casino branding. And, you know, we made a comment that it's fun branding, you know, bright, bold. And, you know, the same way that cigarette companies used to target children with the fun, cartoonish, bright marketing is similar to what Casino is doing as well. Once again, we just don't want to exploit a vulnerable population, especially given that, you know, William Patton's across the street. Bright Horizons is in the Wilmore Place car park now. There's plenty of families walking by on the bus stops. It's always children around. You know, with the previous establishment, there was a lot of loitering. We live on the other side of the building and see the loitering. You know, it's just unsavory.
Okay, what I'll do, I'll take Amanda briefly, and then I'll come to the applicant, give you a chance to reply to those.
All I would want to say through the chair is that the objector has the opportunity that, although we can't deviate from the legal requirements, that there are powers if they have any concerns in the future that they can raise them with the authority, and we can investigate those as to whether or not the matter needs to be brought back to committee. So you do have, this is not the end that you know, no action can be taken going forward if you have concerns or there is something that we can deal with. So please be reassured that there are other powers as well available to you.
Thank you for that. If I could just say one more thing, my husband and I moved into this property knowing that the Betfred was there. We've been here for 4 years, but knowing now what I know, I don't know that I would move in here again as a result.
That's obviously not matter for you.
I'm happy to see it go. So now that I see a similar place coming in, it disturbs me.
Okay. Calvin, do you want to respond to those remarks? I think you're on mute.
Sid, you broke up a little. Were you inviting me to reply to what's been said?
I was. Yes, I was.
Thank you. I'm going to do it very briefly, but briefly does not mean disrespectfully. It just means I'm respecting the subcommittee by being brief. Just 3 points. The first is the strip club analogy. And what I would say to the objector is that the legislation around strip clubs, sex shops and sex cinemas is much broader and gives a much broader discretion to the licensing authority than exists under the Gambling Act. Each of these regimes has different rules. Secondly, so far as the objector's view about the morality or immorality of gambling, I must say that that is simply irrelevant, as the Gambling Commission itself makes clear expressly at page 59 of our bundle. So this isn't a moral debate, although I do accept that in another place it could be a moral debate. You could have a moral debate about it in a church meeting or in Parliament or in a local civic meeting, but this has been said is a legal meeting. Thirdly, so far as targeting exterior material at children, no, my client doesn't do that, and it really can't, because it would be in breach of the Advertising Standards Authority's Committee of Advertising Practice Codes, which are self-regulatory but are then enforced through gambling regulation, through the license conditions and codes of practice, which are at page 183 of our bundle. We absolutely mustn't target advertising at children, and you wouldn't see cartoons over the front of one of my clients' premises. The objector has produced a photograph, however, from 2016, which was taken in Putney during the Euros, when a couple of Union Jacks were placed in the window. So that's what that is. But you don't routinely find Union Jacks in the windows either. I hope that is a sufficient response to the points which have been made.
Emma.
Sorry. Could I also just invite Mr. Colvin again just to go back over the points he's made already, but perhaps to reinforce them about how this premises is different and to a betting shop. I think you did talk about that, but in terms of the company's normal clientele and the way it operates.
Yes, it is a function, first of all, of its product and what you're actually getting offered in bingo compared to betting. One of the things which happens in betting is, of course, there is an event. So people can come in and they can put money on a horse race sometime in advance, and then they hang around and wait for the horse race to start, or the football match, or whatever it may be. And so in the interior of betting offices, you've always got a sort of public gathering area where people can sit on the seats and watch the event. And that finds its correspondence in the kind of customers who go in there, and then the way they hang around outside, having a chat, having a cigarette, having a beer, and so on. So it becomes more of a sort of social meeting place. My clients' premises are really completely different. Their demographic is different, first of all. The figures in the bundle show you that the demographic is not only older, but it's 48% across the estate, 48% female. And people don't come in and socialize in groups. They tend to come in singly or perhaps with their partners. They have a play on the games, and when they're done, they just wander off. There's no reason for them to loiter. They come in to do what they came in to do, and then they leave. But when they come in, and this is very different from a betting office, they're not invited to sit in some sort of collective social gathering area. As you've seen from the layout, you come in and you're directed essentially to play the games, and that's what people do. But as soon as you get in, unlike a betting office where you're likely to find the staff member stuck behind a perspex screen with their head down paying out bets or taking bets, particularly at race times, in these bingo premises there's a uniformed trained staff member who's liable to greet you practically as soon as you get in. So if you're an untoward for any sort of reason, you're inebriated, or you're a street drinker, or you've no intention of playing, and so forth, your presence is noted and monitored literally as soon as you get in. The other aspect of these bingo premises is that whereas in betting you would tend to see a sort of sine wave if you looked at or bell curve, I think is the expression, if you looked at the number of customers in the betting office, reasonably small in the morning, building up towards lunchtime, at its peak during race times, or if there's a football game on, and then falling off again. Bingo just doesn't experience that at all. You get just a handful of people in at all times. So if you wandered into one of my clients' premises, you might find 3 or 5 people in there. 10 would definitely be very exceptional. And so just the idea of numbers building up and then people peregrinating outside, it just doesn't happen. People come in singly and in couples in dribs and drabs. They're well monitored, they're well supervised, they're liable to get a cup of tea from the staff who tend to know them because the numbers are small enough for there to be a relationship which develops. They have their game and then they wander off again, and they will be no more of an issue for the local area than any other kind of retail facility on the high street.
Kimberly, do you want to respond?
I think I just one final thing to say, and people choose to live in Stoke Newington because of its character. And a big part of that character is due to the type of establishments that operate here. And, you know, Stoke Newington has a history of residents resisting large chains opening branches, and Church Street's appeal today is based on this as well. And I still believe that a casino will sell the area and detract from what makes it popular and family friendly. Thank you.
I had one point of detail I wanted to raise, and that was simply in response to the conditions you agreed with licensing. There is one condition 6, which refers to individuals who are deemed to be under the influence of excessive alcohol. And I was slightly concerned that that's open to interpretation. What exactly is excessive? What isn't? And in your statement, paragraph 12.2, you just used the term people who are intoxicated.
Well, I can certainly see your point, and I have to say that influenced, when you look at that as just a word, effectively carries that meaning, doesn't it? The person was influenced by alcohol. I can take instructions, but I doubt there'd be any issue about deleting the word excessive, because it just takes out that value judgment, and people shouldn't come in gamble if they're influenced by alcohol. Can I just take instructions? Or if anyone thinks I shouldn't be doing that, can they just raise their hand? Otherwise, let's just take it that the word excessive disappears.
Well, we want to say those who appear to be intoxicated, simply.
Intoxicated is fine as well. Either of those formulations is absolutely fine.
That's the only matter I really had to raise on it. Other than that, I'm afraid I think it's very straightforward. I think we're in a quite narrow scheme of consideration, really. Kimberly, I understand that when someone calls your views irrelevant, that's a bit annoying, but I think he meant it entirely in the narrow legalistic sense, and not as any way necessarily dismissive of your opinion in general.
No, I understand, and it's not just my opinion. I'm speaking on behalf of a number of people, but thank you for that.
Any final colleagues? Councillor Snell, final points?
I think I've heard enough to make a decision. I'm very happy to move to summing up.
Flavia, anything you want?
Thank you. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll sum up in the same order as before. Colvin, you first.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. But we've had a hearing. I've made my points. I've also made them in writing, and there's nothing I can usefully add. Thank you.
Okay, Kimberly.
Thank you. I've expressed my concern, and thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you all very much for attending. Normally we'd adjourn and come back and give you our decision, but in these circumstances, we'll have to wait for several days for it to be sent to you. We'll do that as soon as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you.
External parties, please leave.
Thank you very much indeed, councillors.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.